Which daily trainer from Under Armour is right for you? Today we're comparing the Infinite Pro 2 with the Infinite Elite 2. What's up everybody, I'm Eric McIntyre, aka Rad Dad Bod, and you're watching Rad Dad Bod TV, where we review running shoes. Today we're going to be comparing two Under Armour daily trainers, the Infinite Pro 2 and Infinite Elite 2. And if it's your first time watching one of my videos, you may notice some timestamps below. Feel free to jump around to the various parts of this comparison, but if you do so, I would sure appreciate if you come back and watch the full thing when you get a sec, so I put a lot of time and effort into these videos. And if you've been a viewer for a while, but you haven't yet hit that subscribe button, please consider doing so today and turning on notifications so you get notified every time I drop a new video. Now, before we dive into specifics, some quick disclaimers and disclosures about these two shoes are that I was provided them for free for the purpose of review directly from Under Armour. That being said, I wasn't paid. I'm not actually obligated or required to include these shoes in any specific content. I'm not given talk tracks, talking points. No one watches these videos beforehand, and all thoughts are entirely my own. Now with that out of the way, let's talk about the intended use of these two shoes. Now for the most part, these shoes both have the same intended use. I think you could maybe call the Infinite Pro a standard daily trainer and the Infinite Elite like more of a max cushion daily trainer, but really I think they're pretty much the same in terms of usage and intended use. The difference being that the Infinite Elite is just going to be a little bit more premium overall in materials and experience, and we'll break that down obviously throughout this video. Now from a price perspective, the Infinite Pro 2 comes in at $130, which is really affordable, actually really low even for a standard daily trainer. And then the Infinite Elite 2 comes in at $160, which is right in line with more of those premium daily training options. From a specs perspective, the Pro comes in at 10.8 ounces, which is 306 grams. Meanwhile, the Elite comes in at 10 ounces, which is 283 grams. And then from a stack standpoint, the Pro is 32 in the heel, 24 in the forefoot for an 8mm heel to toe drop, and the Elite is 36 in the heel, 28 in the forefoot for an 8mm heel to toe drop. So despite having a decent amount more cushion in the Elite, it's actually lighter overall compared to the Pro. Now from a fit perspective, you would probably expect these to fit almost identical, but honestly, I feel like the fits are pretty unique. So the Infinite Elite for me fit wide throughout. So in the heel, the toe box, the forefoot, or the midfoot, like the whole shoe for me fit like wide foot friendly, maybe on the wide end of standard, maybe not quite full wide, but wide overall. Meanwhile, I felt like the Infinite Pro fit pretty much standard throughout, and even almost snug in that midfoot area. From a length perspective, I also found like the Elite was maybe a tiny bit shorter, but for the most part, both fit true to size lengthwise in my experience. I would not half size up or down. Now from an upper perspective, the Pro has a lightweight engineered mesh. Meanwhile, the Elite has a lightweight vamp mesh. And I found that the lockdown in the Pro was significantly better just because it is a little bit more snug there in the midfoot area. But from an overall like cushion, breathability, and comfort perspective, I found that the Elite was a lot more comfortable, a lot more cushioned, and a lot more breathable. Now the cushion is about the same in the heel, and then the tongues as well are really more mid-weight tongues, so you're not getting a lot of extra cushion in the Elite, but something about the engineered vamp mesh compared to the lightweight engineered mesh, it just is more comfortable, a little bit more breathable, a little bit softer overall, and the upper feels a little bit more flexible and you can kind of move with it, versus I do feel like the Pro, the upper felt just a little bit rigid. It's not uncomfortable, you still have, you know, a gusseted tongue, it's just that the upper just felt firm and rigid in some areas. Now ironically, I do like the heel counter of the Pro a little bit more. You get that flare out and then that heel doesn't come up super high, versus the Elite heel is a little bit awkward for me. I feel like it comes up a little bit awkwardly high here, and then it actually curves in as opposed to out. And that was noticeable. It didn't cause any like rubbing or chafing or blistering in the feet, but it was noticeable. And you know, when you're running in a shoe, you don't necessarily want to always notice it. And so I much prefer the geometry of the heel in the Pro, but overall I think I prefer the breathability and comfort of the Elite. Moving to the midsoles, the Pro has two separate foams. So you have a dual layer. You have the Hover Plus TPU, like beaded TPU up top, and then you have a more firm EVA on bottom. You also have that heel clip, which maybe gives you a little bit of stability and guidance in the shoe. But the overall experience in the Pro is that it is fairly firm underfoot. it's still soft, like it still has some give, but you're not getting a lot of bounce. It's really a lot more ground feel overall, just kind of a firmer, more supportive shoe. Now, I don't think that it's necessarily more stable than the Elite. I felt like the Elite was actually really, really stable. And I feel like the Elite, the outsole actually extends further than the upper than it does in the Pro. So I actually think you get a wider overall base in the Elite, but the Elite has the Hover Plus. It's that beaded TPU foam throughout the entirety of the midsole, and it's significantly more bouncy. It's not that much softer. It is softer, but it's not like a super squishy experience. It's more of a bouncy, supportive, structured feel. And so between the two midsoles, I feel like the Infinite Elite is a lot more pace versatile. It's a lot more comfortable. It's a lot more bouncy. But if you don't want something that's going to give you bounce or responsiveness, you prefer a more like firmer, supportive foam, then you might prefer the Pro in that aspect. Now, the outsoles are going to be fairly similar overall. Coverage-wise, it's about the same. And the overall rubber material underfoot, I think, is the same as well. So you just kind of have a durable rubber with kind of that circular traction pattern. And I find that the grip does a really good job both on road, treadmill, even if there's been like a little bit of moisture, a little bit of rain or something like that. I'm not seeing any noticeable wear and tear on either shoe. I have just over 30 miles on both pairs, and there's, again, no noticeable wear and tear. So I do think that these outsoles are going to be fairly durable. Now, as far as my pick between these two shoes, I lean pretty heavily towards the Elite. You know, $30 is not nothing when it comes to a running shoe, but in this instance, I do feel like it's worth the upgrade. I feel like anyone who likes the Pro will like the Elite more. Again, different strides, different shoes, different preferences though, and so I'm sure there will be some that do prefer the Pro, but I just feel like they're mainly going to be in the minority of people buying running shoes. The Elite gives you, in my opinion, pretty much everything that the Pro gives you, but in a more premium package, hence the price point and kind of the, you know, it's supposed to be kind of a tier up from the Pro. So that shouldn't necessarily be surprising. Now, I think that the Pro is still a really solid shoe. $130 is a steal for a running shoe nowadays, especially like a legit performance running shoe, a shoe that's not necessarily made to be budget. Again, $130, really, really solid overall. And if you're someone who doesn't like the bouncy feel, or you want something that isn't like super max cushion, you know, a more traditional runner, then the Pro, again, may be the move. But for me, specifically, like my pick, my preference, I'm going with the Elite. I think the Elite is going to be honestly a contender for max cushion shoe of the year. I think it's a very, very good shoe. We'll just kind of have to see what's come out. I haven't tried a ton of max cushion shoes this year, so we'll just kind of have to see how I feel overall. But really, really solid shoe in my mind. Now, just some final thoughts. You know, both of these are really, really solid shoes, and I think Under Armour is doing some solid stuff in the running space. I just feel like they're maybe not catering their marketing or advertising specifically towards running as strongly as many other brands in the space, but they're putting out some really, really solid products at some really decent price points. In fact, if you watch the 2025 Boston Marathon, the women's race, Sharon Lokedi, I think is how you pronounce it, she was actually wearing Under Armour's Velocity Elite 3, and she set a new course record. So clearly you have fast people wearing their shoes and succeeding, taking first in the Boston Marathon, new course record. So there's clearly something going on there, and I do think that it's worth considering for a lot of people. But again, I understand if you're not being advertised to, you may not have the general awareness of the shoes. So for me personally, like I said, I think that the Infinite Elite is going to be up there with max cushion daily trainers this year, but the year's still young, so we'll see kind of what ends up on the shelf by the end of 2025. Now, if you've watched this far, I sure appreciate you. Please take a second, like the video, leave a comment, let me know what other comparisons you'd like to see or what questions you have about these shoes. And if you're not already subscribed, please consider hitting that subscribe button and turning on notifications so you get notified every time I drop a new video. And with that, we'll leave you with a question, which is, what's your favorite max cushion shoe of 2025? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks, everybody.